A cool black nylon bag and a black box with a green dot. Coming up next on GBGuns. Just kidding. This is the PSA Dagger Micro Complete comp version with a DLC slide and a Raven optic. I picked this up with support from the patrons. We're going to do tabletop review and field strip coming up next on GBGuns. Of course, I have a real job and a real income, and but that doesn't pay for all the things on the channel. It's largely dependent on manufacturer generosity and our patrons. And since the patrons are the ones coughing out some cash, I give them the option to vote, and that's what most recently happened here on the channel. However, I also do my best to match what they contribute and what I spend on things, and I was curious about the Dagger Micro. That's right, it's called Dagger Micro, not Micro Dagger, as we've heard on so many other sources. Right there, PSA Dagger Micro. That's how it's called. Anyways, reviewed the full-size Dagger, or rather the compact, but the original Dagger, a while back on the channel, as well as over on GBGunsDepot.com, and it wasn't bad. Then tried out one of their other slides and some of their barrels, and did an article on that. If you're curious about that, head on over there. This was one of their package deals that they had out, so I thought I'd give it a look. For just under $5, got the pistol with a mag in this case, as well as a Raven optic. More details on this will be in the full review article over at GBGunsDepot.com. However, since it comes with the gun, I will mount it, and we will use it for the shooting impressions. As far as the bag, it's a decent bag. You've got some Mall Ninja grade mag pouches and things inside here. A nice big window up here for paperwork or targets. That also came with some decals. As far as kits like this, I'm curious to hear what you guys think. This, for this price, only came with one magazine, which Palmetto State Armory is saying is their own. It sure looks to me like a Shield Arms magazine. Now, the Dagger Micro is based off of the slimline Glock, but uses the Shield Arms fix since Glock, I guess, didn't have it in them to figure out a way to fit more rounds in the same size magazine. By going to a steel-bodied magazine, you end up with thinner walls than the polymer required, which allows for more interior space, which then gives you higher capacity for the same size magazine. So 15 rounds. When I was asking for your opinion on the case thing, I'm the type of shooter and at the point where I would rather have more magazines and less of the bag, but I could also see someone just wanting to get into shooting. Having the bag is nice, and the optic included all of that. Nothing wrong there. In this longer kind of flashbang-esque pouch, we have our federally mandated lock and nothing else in there. It is a Palmetto State Armory labeled lock, so nice of them to do that. We also have the screws and wrench in order to mount the optic. This optic is from Raven, at least that's what it's branded as. I'm sure many of you have learned that red dots are really only coming out of a couple of factories. People just pay to put their name on them and then have some different specs done. It's a lot like laptops and cell phones, and yet we find ourselves arguing over the different brands. It's of the micro footprint. I do like that it actually has buttons for brightness on it. I have a problem with auto brightness dots in that, well, defensive shooting situations, they're less than ideal, to say the least. Rather large for the size of the window, but it fits. What else we got? Oh, more of that will be in the article. Let's not worry about that here. But you get an idea of what all comes in this kit with the gun. Let's get this stuff out of the way and take a look at that Dagger Micro. This particular model with the ported slide, I guess you could say it. I know people like to say comp is a compensation. You've got an expansion chamber integrated into the slide and then a shorter barrel running in it to make that effective. What's nice about these is you're not adding muzzle weight, so you're not risking messing with the timing or the ability of the gun to cycle. You're also not losing velocity by drilling holes into the barrel. For this, PSA went with a 3.4 inch barrel, which is slightly longer than what SIG did on the Macro Comp. This uses a 3.1 inch barrel from the existing 365 line. So we're going to have better velocity, but as a result, we're also, of course, going to have a slightly longer slide but it does bring that SIG feature to the Glock-based platform, which I think is kind of neat. Start by show and clear, flip it over, do we get magazine release or ejection? Gotta make sure the button's being pushed. Looks like we're just getting release. Yep, that's all. However, thanks to the metal body, should drop out without much issue. Sure wish there was more than one magazine. Other than that, what you're looking at is going to follow very closely to Glock's general designs interior-wise. However, the pistol itself is different. We have one slot of pick rail on underneath the dust cover here, which is probably about as much as you could possibly fit on this. Slide frame, we've got a lot of play up front, which is what you'd expect from the Glock rail system, as well as having so much longer of a slide than frame. Does that affect accuracy? No, because guess what? Even if it's changing the angle of the sights and everything, you're still aiming off of the sights, not aiming off of how you hold the grip. We have texture on the front of the trigger guard, which is an interesting European flair for something coming out of North Carolina, as well as underneath the trigger guard, which is nice. Texture pads added both sides. These are enough to have texture, but not super aggressive. I can see them serving well as a memory point or index point. However, as far as it adding actual traction for a support side thumb, not going to rely too much on that based on what I'm feeling. Our angles around the trigger guard, maybe some potential for Glock knuckle, we'll find out with some holster work over time, but doesn't feel too bad. While we're here, we might as well pause for some trigger talk. As with most people that have some experience, come to realize that trigger weight is not important, unless it's absurd, of course. Trigger feel is what's important. So we've got a clear gun. Let's see what this trigger feels like. It is a hinge design. A lot of people have complained about those. I don't know what the complaint is because I don't feel it. But we have a soft, spongy take up to a wall. Little creep. Decent break. Reset that takes us back to the end of that sponge. It's rather short. And although it's not the cleanest of triggers, if you just pull through, it's actually not bad, and the wall's pretty findable, pretty predictable. That little bit of extra travel might even help resist some flinch nosedive characteristics, depending on your shooting skill. The rest of the frame, got that same texture up front, a little bit of toe kick. Is that going to save me from getting pinched? That's what happens to me on most 15 round 9mm. It did. And it saved me because the floor plate actually has some space there. Notice we also have a little divot here in case you're unfamiliar with how to clear a Type 3 malfunction. The panic way is to rip, so this will assist you with that. Not much beveling underneath for magwell, but you can't expect that from such a slim framed gun. Coming around the back side of the pistol, we can see we've got texture where we want it, don't have it where we don't want it, so that's nice. Side frame is pretty loose. See our 3-dot sights, and of course the front sight does have to be set back to make room for that port. The serrations on here work pretty well. I've come to find, and we've got to thank, who was it that did it first? I think the Beretta first-gen APXs that look like truck tires. Having extra space between there really lets some flesh get in there and really lets you grab. So thank you to them for doing that. And you guys might be curious how this compares next to a Dagger Compact. I'll go grab that and we'll do a quick side-by-side. Now, I typically don't like doing side-by-sides, even photos, because it's so easy for camera angle to make things look like they're about the same, or to show like it. The focal length, the zoom, so many things in photography can change the way stuff looks, but I'll do my best. You can see how much slimmer it is. And a funny thing at looking at the grip here is that one of the things that made the Dagger more comfortable was it sort of swelled in the middle, gave a little bit of palm swell, which obviously they could not do on the slimline and still have it be slim. So it's significantly thinner that way, but you can also see the slide a little bit thinner. And as far as a 4-inch versus a 3.4-inch with a comp, If I line these up, you can see we're about the same length, maybe slightly longer on the new guy, but it's going to be roughly the same size, just less muzzle energy and thinner in hand. Now, to both audience and YouTube moderator, the reason why I didn't show you the manual showing how to field strip this is the manual is a QR code. So without scanning that, we're just going to have to go off what we know. After checking for clear, we're going to release the striker, and then we've got takedown tabs on both sides that need to be pulled down. I squeeze this way to bring the slide back just a hair, and then it comes forward and off. And now we can take a look at our internals of the frame. You can see a very Gen 3 clock looking setup. Take our slide apart, we're going to add a little bit of pressure and remove, and we have a triple stacked recoil assembly, very familiar to the one we just pulled out of Adaria Arms. I'm excited to see these things becoming more normal and more affordable. I first experienced a multiple spring, as in 3-spring setup in a pistol with a not so cheap DPN system. Company out of Greece makes incredible recoil assemblies. Those ones are tunable because they're meant for competition, at least that was the roots. This one is not, but I found it does make for a softer shooting gun. Take the barrel out, we're going to unlock it and pull it back out. Nice high polish on there. It's a pretty barrel. No polish except for the feed ramp, which looks dark, but it's obviously got the same coating on it. Taking a look inside of our slide, and you can see pretty simple but very nicely machined. Now there have been a lot of horror stories about Palmetto State Armory quality lately. We'll find out how this one does. As of the date of this recording, not published but recording, this is brand new, out of the box, current production, so we'll find out. Now for chamber fitment, you use a piece of Liberty Ammunition Civil Defense, like the nickel plating, because it keeps the brass nice, especially for a round that I'm going to handle over and over again. I'm going to drop in here and listen for a plunk like that. Make sure the round can turn freely as it can. That tells us there's no burrs inside. And then looking for chamber support, we're looking to see how much the brass is supported, and we can see that unlike a Glock, we have a fully supported chamber here, which is nice. That's valuable should a case want to rupture or there be some other type of catastrophic failure. You've got the strength of the chamber, making sure that force wants to head out the barrel and not down into your hand. As I reassemble this, I'll tell you about what you'll see in the range video. You'll see absolute first shots through the gun. That's right, no practice, no warm-up, no highlight reels or look how cool I can be. No, we give you that absolute first impression because I think that's very important. That's the thing that you and I, well, any of us would have as consumers. Then we'll do full magazine +1, see how the gun runs fully stuffed. Take it over to our trademark What's for Dinner test, see what the gun eats, running 10 additional loads through the gun. Then over to the spinner for sights and trigger control. Also shows us kind of a practical indication of actual energy coming out of the gun. 5 shots from 7 yards for practical accuracy before giving you concluding thoughts. As always, if you want specs, prices, links, etc., where to get any of this stuff, check the pinned comment over at GBGunsDepot.com is where the full review will be. And hint hint, those reviews are generally published well in advance of the videos here on YouTube. So if you want to be more up to speed, just sign up for our mailing list over at GBGunsDepot.com. It's only used to send out notifications of new posts. Thanks for watching. Thank you patrons for the support, and we'll see you on the range.